Here's another G.I. Joe classified figure from last year that I haven't unboxed yet. I want to get to him, Shadow Tracker. I don't know much about him at all, so he must be a more recent G.I. Joe. Definitely not something I remember from the 80s, 90s, anything like that, so probably like a later 2000s thing. If that's the case, be sure to let me know in the comment section. A couple things about him, just looking at the box. I'm really going in brand new here with Shadow Tracker. He is a 6.4 inch figure, which means he is really at the tall end of the scale, right up there with Crocmaster, with Sergeant Slaughter, things like that. There is a couple mask options for him. I'm not sure if that's his actual face, or if it's just kind of a mask, part of his character. I'm not quite sure. Again, very exciting times, because I like learning about new things, and Shadow Tracker is going to be one of those new things for me. Just get a quick look at the box before I tear into it here, and now it's time to open this thing. Let's grab the foot locker here first. It says Cobra Shadow Tracker. And the next thing is the figure. Here he is, Shadow Tracker in all of his glory. I need to clip him out, get him free from the packaging, and we can get a little better look at him. And there he is. Here is Shadow Tracker outside of the packaging. I could totally see him going toe-to-toe with Rakondo, with Outback on the Joe team. There's a lot of animal bone on this figure here. We have it on the shoulders, on the gauntlet. He has a necklace. There's some around his belt. Gives him a very distinct design amongst all of the other Cobras. And there's a lot of great paint application going on here. There is some wash over the shoulder pad bone I see there. There's like a leopard, a cheetah print, something kind of that on his belt. And yeah, I mean, there's even more washes going on with his face masks that he has just to kind of begin with. I think the character is going to take a little more shape once we get the accessories out, so let's do that.
Bruh.
I did not mean to do that. All right, there, I've collected them all. I made sure of it. I double-checked the box, and yes, everything is there. I was curious to see how the different face sculpts work, because it doesn't look like this part removes, and when I saw the masks, they are just that. They press fit over Shadow Tracker's base face. Kind of rhymes. Here we have the animal skull right there, and now we are going to put on this, I don't know what even to call it. It almost looks like a neon hockey mask over top of his like skull mask. Take a look at it there. It does provide some interesting depth and color to the character that does put him more in line with some of the other Cobra figures who, for the most part, I mean, other than some of the ninjas, kind of have like a high-tech feel to them, and I feel this kind of satisfies that. I think that's a really good way to describe Shadow Tracker, is like I could totally see this figure in like a movie like Predator. We have more accessories to get out. The masks were just kind of the most interesting piece to me, so let's get the other accessories. His backpack is also his quiver for the bow that's also part of the accessories. And the interesting thing they did here is, because he has really long hair in the back, is they offset the hair and they also offset the peg so that he could equip his backpack. And if you look at it there, it fits just perfectly. He has this silver knife right here. It's got kind of wicked sharp corners and edges to it. I'm not sure where it fits on the character. I would think it would go near his holster there, but it doesn't really fit. The only other place that I can think of is on his backpack here. There is this loop that's a little better fit in the back there, so we'll see with how everything shakes out with the other accessories. He has this survival axe. The handle on this is square. The holder on this is square. I think this is probably where this goes. Let's try to put that in there. It kind of reminds me of barbecue in that sense. And sure enough, that seems to fit really well. There is an additional arrow, so he could knock an arrow if he needed to, and that, I'm guessing, fits right alongside the other arrows. There, that's about as far as it goes, and you can see that there is kind of like a slight grading to it, so this arrow here is the one most pointed up, so if he were to reach back and pull an arrow, it would be the most readily and most convenient to him. There's two final remaining pieces. We have his bow and arrow, that is his main weapon, and we have this little barrel piece right there. And if I'm looking at the box correctly, it fits right here on the bow. Again, if I'm looking at the box correctly, it's supposed to act as an arrow guide. I don't know much about archery at all, so somebody probably who has more knowledge can help me out in the comment section there. What's interesting, though, about Shadow Tracker, and I can immediately see it without testing it any further, is the limited mobility of this character. With this big giant flak jacket on, it immediately limits his ability to ab crunch. And the way that his face sculpt sits on top of the flak jacket, he doesn't really have any mobility in the head either. His left arm has the best range of motion because there is no pauldron on the side that kind of limits the ability to crank it up this way. And the butterfly joints on this, again, due to the flak jacket, aren't really doing any favors for Shadow Tracker. And as we moved towards his legs, this giant animal pelt that sits off of his belt is limiting the left side leg, while the right leg, kind of like the left arm, does a really good job of having that range of motion, but as long as you remove that survival axe, because if I move his knee all the way back, as far as it can go, you can see that this is sticking down and going to kind of impede some of the posability of this thing. Now, granted, you don't have to have all of the accessories on him at all the time, but I'm just noticing, I'm just kind of picking up on these things before we take him over to the table there and get a little better look. So what do you say, let's do that and get a little closer look at Shadow Tracker. And here we have Shadow Tracker up close. Let's take off this mask right here, and you can kind of get a better look at the wash that is over this skull mask. It's got this very mossy look to it, and it kind of complements the wash that here is on this animal skull. I was surprised that that same wash wasn't carried over to this bone element right here, as well as the necklace, but I am impressed with the washes that were done here. Let's get a closer look at this techno mask, if possible. Almost, yeah, if I remove the figure there, you can kind of see that there are some, almost looks like circuits. It looks very sci-fi, looks very high-tech. It does have this mask as well. I don't know what animal this is from, and as you see here, kind of like Zartan, where he has those masks that put over his face, this is kind of a similar system, and you just slot it over there, and it does a decent job at sticking. Like, if I just kind of knock it or just flick it a little bit there, like, it stays on. There is a good amount of friction there. I would feel very confident putting this on the shelf, and if he were to fall over, I don't think this would pop off. Like, I'm kind of giving it a little bit of resistance here. It's doing a good job staying on. But one thing I'm noticing about this guy is that he is very tank-like. Huge, imposing character, but there's not a whole lot of options to move him around. I mean, this is really like his most expressive arm over here, and the butterfly joints, you can see that they are there, but they don't have a whole lot of room. And this animal pelt here around his waist hampers a lot of the movement. Just the way that it's cut, it just comes right below the knee. So I can't really like move that without this thing kind of getting in the way. And there's not a lot of upward movement, unlike a lot of the other belts, like Agent Helix over here. Because of his flak jacket, because of this heavy vest, it's just not going to move. It's all pretty stationary there. I think you can get away with that with a figure like Shadow Tracker because he is such a large character. You can have him in these power poses that don't need a whole lot of movement to him. A lot of my critique so far is about the movement of the character, but what I have to say I really enjoy about him is the details, the sculpts, the washes, the visual interest in the design. And even though he can't move his neck really up and down, it doesn't detract from he really stands out on the Cobra shelf. That said, let's see what we can do with Shadow Tracker. I'll get him in some poses, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. Tracker for you. The design of the character is really well done, and it's visually interesting. There's a lot going on with him. Very unique compared to all of the other Cobras on my shelf. Just about nearly everything design-wise I have very few complaints with. But the things that I wish I could change, of course, being the mobility of the figure, it is rather limited. So as a visually interesting sculptural piece, Shadow Tracker is probably near the top of my favorites on G.I. Joe Classified as the entire series, and that's hampered by the ability, well, actually, I guess its lack of ability to move and pose this figure while he's sitting on a shelf. So that's Shadow Tracker for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, if you like Nerf blasters, if you like toys, if you like collectibles, if you like G.I. Joes or Cobras, in this guy's case, be sure to follow. We'll see you next time.